Part 46. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 451. Chapter 451. Don't touch other people's girlfriends casually. Xia Ying fed Stefan until he was full before letting him go. The poor little guy was not very good at refusing. Xia Ying easily persuaded him to try various snacks. But okay, judging from his performance, I quite like it. After eating and drinking, the two of them sat in front of the piano and started playing. The sound of music made Xia Ying ignore the ringing of her bracelet bell. Until, Yu Lingfeng appeared at the door of the piano room, leaning in front of the door, staring at the smiling Xia Ying with a complicated face, playing the piano quietly beside him, turning his head to look at Xia Ying from time to time. Stefan looked on. Is it his illusion or something? Why does he feel that this little kid looks at Xia Ying with an unusual expression? However, maybe he is overthinking, and he may treat her as a sister. First of all, this child has no brothers, sisters, and no friends. It is rare to have someone with whom he gets along day and night and has something in common, so it is easy for him to have problems. Emotional. For Stefan, Xia Ying's appearance was a beautiful accident. Yu Lingfeng didn't know what kind of changes Xia Ying would bring to Stefan's life in the future, but one thing was clear, Xia Ying would definitely become an important friend in Stefan's life. If he treats her as a friend. Yu Lingfeng had been standing quietly at the door looking at Xia Ying. He wanted to know how long it would take for Xia Ying to find him. Unexpectedly, Stefan was the first one to discover Yu Lingfeng. After playing the song, Xia Ying was still thinking about where she had failed to grasp the rhythm just now. Stefan raised his eyes inadvertently and saw the tall and handsome young man at the door. Stefan's eyes lit up. This person seemed very familiar. He was always there during the previous games. Stefan glanced sideways at Xia Ying again, suddenly frowned, and his handsome little face drooped. Is that person Xia Ying's boyfriend? With this thought, Stefan suddenly approached Xia Ying, with an aggrieved face, and rubbed Xia Ying's arm like a docile kitten. Yu Lingfeng's face suddenly darkened, and then he walked toward the two of them with his long legs. Xia Ying was surprised for a moment by Stefan's sudden touch. She turned around and looked at Stefan, who was showing sadness, and asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" Before Stefan could say anything, Yu Lingfeng had already walked up to Xia Ying. Xia Ying felt someone approaching beside her, raised her eyes and saw Yu Lingfeng. "Yu Lingfeng, why are you here?" Yu Lingfeng did not answer Xia Ying's question, but stared at Stefan, who was leaning against Xia Ying. Yu Lingfeng narrowed his eyes, opened his thin lips slightly, and said in fluent English, "Kid, no one told you that you can't touch other people's girlfriends casually." Xia Ying was stunned when she heard Yu Lingfeng's words, then turned to look at Stefan, who was beside her as if nothing had happened. Stefan sat up straight, looking at Yu Lingfeng with a straight face. I have to say that Yu Lingfeng was so fluent when he spoke English. However, the most important thing at the moment is not this, but how the two of them became hostile. Xia Ying stood up, walked to Yu Lingfeng, tugged on his arm, and said, "Yu Lingfeng, he is just a child, why do you care about him?" Yu Lingfeng took a deep breath and said nothing. Children. He thought so at first, but until the provocative look in his eyes just now, it was obvious that this little guy's mind was not pure at all. Thanks to the little cutie ghost for the reward. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 452. Chapter 452. Why didn't I realize you were so jealous? Stefan didn't say anything, he just kept staring at Yu Lingfeng. Even though Yu Lingfeng's eyes were as cold as a cold pool and full of hostility, Stefan still looked like a newborn calf who is not afraid of tigers. He looked directly into Yu Lingfeng's eyes without showing any signs of weakness. But, the next second, Yu Lingfeng suddenly raised the corners of her lips slightly, then looked at Stefan meaningfully, leaned over and pressed a soft kiss on Xia Ying's lips. Xia Ying was stunned for a moment, and Stefan's pupils dilated instantly. The scene in front of him caught him off guard for a moment. Yu Lingfeng just gave Xia Ying a gentle kiss, and then left. Looking at Stefan's injured look, he had achieved the effect he wanted. Before Xia Ying could realize why Yu Lingfeng suddenly kissed her just now, she was about to say something when Yu Lingfeng interrupted her. "I have something to do tomorrow and I have to leave soon. Stop practicing and stay with me." Yu Lingfeng's words were non-negotiable. "But teacher Modzi will come over later to check the results," Xia Ying said. Yu Lingfeng frowned slightly. "When?" Xia Ying glanced at the clock on the wall and said, "There's about an hour and a half left." "Enough." After Yu Lingfeng finished speaking, he reached out and took Xia Ying's wrist. With a complicated expression on Stefan's face, he left with Xia Ying. "Yu Lingfeng, what were you doing just now? Why did you suddenly kiss me in front of Stefan?" On the way, Xia Ying looked up at the handsome Yu Lingfeng and said. Yu Lingfeng turned to look at Xia Ying and tried to explain in a gentle tone, "Although he is indeed pitiful, this is not a reason why he can have an idea of you." Xia Ying frowned upon hearing this. How could he? Stefan had always been lukewarm to her before, and he only talked to her once. Why did it come to Yu Lingfeng's mouth that he had an idea to attack her? "It's just that you didn't see it," Yu Lingfeng said lightly. "He has a good impression of you." "That's just because I am his senior sister," Xia Ying said. For autistic patients like Stefan, interpersonal communication is difficult, and love and the like are almost impossible. Moreover, Stefan is still young and has no idea about gender knowledge. He was willing to get close to her, probably because she was nice to him, so he relaxed his vigilance towards her. Hopefully. Yu Lingfeng didn't say anything more. It does seem a bit unreasonable to be jealous of a brat and an autistic child. It's just that at that moment, the look in Stefan's eyes when he looked at him, and when he saw him snatching Xia Ying away from him, were full of hostility. Yu Lingfeng can be 100% sure of this. "Yu Lingfeng, why didn't I realize you were so jealous before?" Xia Ying suddenly laughed evilly and stared at Yu Lingfeng narrowly. Yu Lingfeng frowned slightly, and when she met Xia Ying's gaze, she smiled so hard that she was really laughing at him without any cover-up. Yu Lingfeng twitched his lips and said, "There are still many things you haven't discovered yet." "For example?" Yu Lingfeng's words inexplicably aroused Xia Ying's interest. Yu Lingfeng lowered his eyes, and an imperceptible smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Slowly discover it." Xia Ying curled her lips and said coquettishly, "Huh, stingy, you deliberately make me appetizing." Yu Lingfeng smiled lightly and said nothing. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 453. Chapter 453. You should be nicer to them. Yu Lingfeng, is there any progress in the case you are investigating? Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng walked side by side in a small park nearby. They walked a long way. Now the sky has gradually begun to darken, and there are gradually fewer people in the park. The murderer has basically been identified, but he has not been found yet. Is it difficult to find? Xia Ying turned her head and asked. A person as capable as Officer Song came to ask Yu Lingfeng for help, which shows that the murderer must be very unusual. Well, it's difficult. Yu Lingfeng nodded, and then said, "The murderer knows the art of witchcraft." The art of witchcraft. Xia Ying was stunned for a moment, then subconsciously lowered her head and looked at the little goo insects on her wrist. Yu Lingfeng noticed Xia Ying's little movements, glanced at Xia Ying's bracelet, and then said, "As I told you, most of the goo bugs are bad and used to harm people. People like you, My first time meeting. When the little goo insects heard Yu Lingfeng talking about them, they timidly stuck out their little heads. After meeting Yu Lingfeng's stern gaze, they quickly shrank back. I used to think that the art of witchcraft and poison was just folklore and didn't exist, but I didn't expect that it actually existed and that some people actually knew how to use it. Xia Ying was a little surprised. There are very few people who know the art of witchcraft and voodoo, and even fewer who are proficient in it. I told you before that raising voodoo insects is a very dangerous thing. Those extremely harmful voodoo insects are the most difficult to raise and the easiest to raise. Backlash. The little bugs were unhappy after hearing this. They all leaned out and stared at Yu Lingfeng with green eyes, blinking as if protesting with Yu Lingfeng. They are not bad bugs, and they will not bite their owners back. Xia Ying couldn't help but smile when she saw the reaction of the little goo insects. Yu Lingfeng, did you see their little eyes, glaring at you? Yu Lingfeng lowered his eyes and glanced at the group of little goo insects. How do you know they are staring at me? From Yu Lingfeng's point of view, the group of goo insects have no expression at all, right? Xia Ying can see this? Well, after we've been together for a long time, I've slowly come to know, Xia Ying continued, raising her wrist to show Yu Lingfeng the group of small goo insects. At first I couldn't even distinguish between 9 of them. Clearly, now I know who it is if it flies out. Moreover, they actually have emotions and sorrows, so you have to feel it with your heart. Yu Lingfeng saw that Xia Ying was so involved in explaining to him, and he probably sensed her enthusiasm for those little bugs. Yu Lingfeng, you have to be nice to them. Every time you come, they are afraid of you. Xia Ying said. I'm not ready to do anything to them now, it's just that they think too much. No, the little bugs can tell by the look in your eyes that you are still wary of them. Xia Ying said. Yu Lingfeng narrowed his eyes. Xia Ying is so familiar with these insects, how can she actually understand each other's psychological activities? Yu Lingfeng can't tell whether this is good or bad. Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng were walking when they suddenly heard a strange sound coming from the rustling grass beside them. Xia Ying frowned and listened with her ears raised, as if it was coming from not far away. It seemed to be a woman, moaning in pain in a low voice, intermittently, as if she was in danger. Xia Ying thought so and quickly stepped forward to find out. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 454. Chapter 454 Not suitable for children. Before Xia Ying could walk a few steps, she was suddenly grabbed by the wrist by Yu Lingfeng, who was behind her. He then pulled Xia Ying into his arms and covered her eyes. Yu Lingfeng's face turned a little dark, and he said to Xia Ying in a low voice, "Don't make any sound." Xia Ying didn't know why, but she still kept silent. However, she didn't know what Yu Lingfeng wanted to do. He kept covering her eyes to prevent her from making any sound. Yu Lingfeng covered Xia Ying's eyes and led her back. Yu Lingfeng thought that he would be able to get rid of this embarrassing situation soon, but the woman behind him suddenly said, "My dear, you are so great." Then the man's lewd and evil laughter came. Xia Ying's face suddenly heated up, and she suddenly understood what the woman was doing just now. She thought the woman had just encountered some kind of danger, was injured or something, and was moaning in pain, but she was almost ready to go over and take a look. Fortunately, Yu Lingfeng reacted in time and quickly covered her eyes and walked back. Yu Lingfeng felt the temperature rise on Xia Ying's face. Only when she was far away did Yu Lingfeng let go of her hand. Xia Ying felt that the air at this moment was awkward. Every time she took a breath, she felt so embarrassed that her heartbeat quickened. 1 minute passed, 2 minutes passed, 5 minutes passed, and neither of them spoke. It was so embarrassing. Ahem, Yu Lingfeng, I just thought. I know. Yu Lingfeng interrupted Xia Ying. He knew that she must have misunderstood something, so he quickly stopped her. It's not suitable for children, don't say this. Yu Lingfeng reached out and rubbed Xia Ying's head and whispered. Xia Ying swallowed silently, she just simply explained. Xia Ying raised her eyes and glanced at Yu Lingfeng, and an inconspicuous blush appeared on Yu Lingfeng's cheeks. Xia Ying glanced at the time and said, "Oh no, Yu Lingfeng, we have to go back. Teacher Modexi will be back soon. It will be terrible if he finds out that I am not here." "Then go back," Yu Lingfeng said calmly. "Uh-huh." Xia Ying nodded and was about to stop a car when she suddenly realized that she forgot to bring her wallet when she went out. She and Yu Lingfeng didn't notice this when they went out. The two of them walked and talked all the way, and they walked a long way without knowing it. It's all because Yu Lingfeng was so anxious when he took her out, so she took her mobile phone with her. Xia Ying looked up at Yu Lingfeng. "Yu Lingfeng, have you brought any money?" Yu Lingfeng frowned. Apparently, he was not aware of this problem. He came directly from the hotel because he wanted to see Xia Ying, so he came directly and completely forgot about bringing money. After all, transportation and the like are really superfluous to him. "It's okay, I'll go back." Yu Lingfeng was about to turn around and leave, but Xia Ying suddenly grabbed his arm. "No, no, no." Xia Ying happily took out a few coins from her pocket. "Let's take the bus." Yu Lingfeng showed a complicated expression. He had never taken a bus before. Because there are always a lot of people, and he always rejects places with a lot of people. Xia Ying seemed to have noticed something. She stared at Yu Lingfeng's frown and said, "Yu Lingfeng, have you never taken a bus?" Yu Lingfeng didn't answer, which was regarded as acquiescence. "Ha, let's experience it today," Xia Ying said as she took Yu Lingfeng's hand and led him to the bus stop not far away. Thanks to the little cutie ghost for the reward. This chapter has been commented on 500. More updates. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 455. Chapter 455. You go to Austria to accompany Xia Ying. Although Yu Lingfeng was reluctant on his face, he did not refuse Xia Ying in such high spirits and had no choice but to let her go. When Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng appeared on the bus, the eyes of everyone in the bus lit up. Meeting Asians in Europe is nothing, but meeting two such beautiful Asians is really pleasing to the eye. Since there were no seats left, Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng stood on the bus, holding hands. The people in the car glanced in the direction of Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng. Like a frightened beast, Yu Lingfeng raised his eyes and shot back at them with a stern gaze. It doesn't matter if he looks at him, but Yu Lingfeng cannot tolerate those boys who stare at Xia Ying with malicious intent. Sure enough, after being glared back by Yu Lingfeng, those people hurriedly looked away. It's just that Europeans are always sentimental and romantic. In their opinion, the exotic Xia Ying was not only beautiful and graceful, but her smile was sweet to the core. Although Xia Ying has Yu Lingfeng next to her, there is always someone who is not afraid of death and comes to chat with her. A foreign friend who felt good about himself glanced at Xia Ying, smiled, then turned around and whispered something to the friend next to him. Yu Lingfeng didn't hear clearly, but the next second, he stood up and walked towards Xia Ying with a peach blossom smile on his face. "Miss, can you leave your phone number?" The boys went straight to the point without any hesitation. Xia Ying's back was turned to him, so she didn't know that the person was talking to her. She was silently recalling the piece of music in her heart, fearing that something would go wrong when Madzai came over to check it out later. Seeing that Xia Ying ignored him, the boy also ignored Yu Lingfeng, who was staring at him eagerly. So, the boy stretched out his hand, ready to pat Xia Ying on the shoulder to make her notice him. However, when his hand was still 1 centimeter away from Xia Ying, the boy was caught off guard and thrown onto the bus by Yu Lingfeng. At this time, the bus happened to stop, and the boy hit another double click due to the unstable gravity and inertia. Before he could realize what was happening, his eyes were filled with stars. His friend quickly ran over to help him, and everyone in the car, including the driver, also took advantage of the stop to look back. Xia Ying turned around and looked at the mess behind her in surprise. She raised her head in confusion and asked Yu Lingfeng, "What happened?" Yu Lingfeng had an expressionless face. He held Xia Ying's hand and said nonchalantly as he got out of the car, "He didn't stand firm." Yu Lingfeng got out of the car, and the moment the car door closed, he did not forget to give the boy who was not afraid of death a look. He felt more and more that leaving Xia Ying alone in Austria was a very unwise decision. He has only been here today and he has discovered so many love rivals and so many people who are interested in Xia Ying. If he doesn't come, what's the point? Yu Lingfeng left when he sent Xia Ying back to Mozai Villa. After returning to China, Yu Lingfeng called Chu Shenxiu. "Damn you, Lingfeng, you came here in the middle of the night to disturb my dreams. You go to Austria to accompany Xia Ying." Chu Shenxiu was originally woken up in the middle of the night and was about to vent his anger. However, after hearing these words, Chu Shenxiu's pupils instantly dilated, and the expression on his face immediately changed from gloomy to clear. His eyes widened and he spoke. She started to tremble because of her excitement. What? What did you say? You want me to go to Austria to accompany cousin Sakura? Thanks to the little cutie Ruyan, Rantong and Shangli for the reward. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 456. Chapter 456. Just as one left, another one came. An hour ago, Chu Shenxiu received a call asking him to go to Austria to accompany Xia Ying. And now, he's on the plane. Although Chu Shenxiu was excited to fly into the sky and stand side by side with the sun, he always felt that this matter was not that simple. Yu Lingfeng is fine, why send him to Austria? And the plane tickets are ready. When a call comes, he will have to catch the plane. Why does he always have a bad feeling? After all, Xia Ying had said before that he was not allowed to follow her. If he suddenly passed by, would Xia Ying scold him? As soon as Chu Shenxiu got off the plane, Yu Lingfeng sent him the location of Modexi Villa, and Yu Lingfeng explained it to him. Don't say that he asked him to come here, otherwise he will be taken back immediately. Chu Shenxiu's face was filled with dark lines. Yu Lingfeng's strange help and instructions made him feel that it was cold here. Although he also wanted to see Xia Ying, he always felt that something was wrong. No matter what, meeting cousin Sakura is the only way to go. Otherwise, if he goes to country S to celebrate the new year, he won't be able to see Xia Ying for at least 2 weeks. Xia Ying heard that someone was looking for her and subconsciously thought it was Yu Lingfeng, but when she walked to the living room, she saw Chu Shenxiu's smiling face. Xia Ying frowned, but before she could say anything, Chu Shenxiu took one step at a time, ran towards Xia Ying, and hugged Xia Ying directly, unable to breathe. Stefan leaned aside silently, his handsome face covered with dark clouds. One just left yesterday, why is another one here today? Big turtle dove. Xia Ying kept beating Chu Shenxiu, let go of me, you want to suffocate yourself to death. Chu Shenxiu finally realized that he might have reacted violently, and his cousin Xia Ying's face turned red. Chu Shenxiu scratched his head, looked at Xia Ying as if begging for mercy, and pursed his lips in embarrassment. I'm sorry, cousin Sakura, I'm too excited. Xia Ying glanced at Chu Shenxiu angrily, didn't I tell you not to follow me? Besides, how did you find me? Just as Chu Shenxiu was about to explain, Yu Lingfeng's instructions came to mind. I just miss you. Chu Shenxiu held Xia Ying's arm and dangled it coquettishly, looking like a docile little puppy. Cousin Sakura, I'm going back to country S for the new year soon, so I want to come over and see you before I leave. Xia Ying was warned by Chu Shenxiu, you won't be able to stay for more than a few days after returning to country S. According to Chu Shenxiu's temperament, he probably wants to come to China non-stop after the New Year's Eve and the first day of the Lunar New Year. As for Chu Shengming, the man who only cared about his research, he probably didn't want to return to country S at all. With that time, he might as well do more research. Xia Ying silently offered incense to her aunt. She didn't know whether it was a blessing or a curse to have sons from these two people. I can't stay for a few days, Xia Ying said. She will return to China in a few days to prepare for the new year. She and Luo Xian were the only ones celebrating the new year this year, and it was particularly deserted. Xia Ying didn't know if her mother was doing well these days while she was away. Although she had been living a fulfilling life during this period, traveling and learning various things, Xia Ying knew that she was actually trying to relieve the loneliness in her heart, or perhaps she was just numbing herself to make her forget Xia Chuanhai earlier. Thanks to the little cutie Snow Live Vortex smiling, Zhe Yuqing, 199.11, VE, no, 177.40, one person. Carnival, what a reward. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 457. Chapter 457 Jun Chennai is not arrogant. Xia Ying has always known how much Luo Xian loves Xia Chuanhai. Even at the time of death in her previous life, Luo Xian left a suicide note that revealed her sad and humble love between the lines. Xia Ying thought of this, and unconsciously, her eyes began to reveal a hint of sadness. Seeing this, Chu Shenxiu frowned and stared at Xia Ying. Cousin Xia Ying, what's wrong with you? I just miss you so much that you came uninvited. Are you angry with me? No, it's not. Xia Ying's meditation was broken by Chu Shenxiu. Xia Ying adjusted her mood and showed a faint smile. Big turtle dove, you have been more honest recently. I practice music and have no time to care about you. Xia Ying warned. Chu Shenxiu curled his lips unhappily after hearing this. Cousin Xia Ying, why am I not honest? Are you so worried about me? I will definitely be very good and will never get into trouble. Okay. Xia Ying smiled. By the way, I almost forgot, I brought you your favorite lollipop. Chu Shenxiu turned around quickly, looked back in his bag for a while, and then handed Xia Ying a lollipop. Xia Ying's eyes suddenly burst into a smile of joy and surprise after seeing the lollipop. Wow, turtle dove, you really win my heart. Xia Ying said cheerfully and took it. When she was in China, her favorite was lollipops. Chu Shenxiu noticed Stefan behind Xia Ying, who was silent and expressionless the whole time. Chu Shenxiu took another one, and then walked towards Stefan. Boy, do you want one? Chu Shenxiu said with a smile. Stefan shook his head. Xia Ying glanced back at them and smiled. Big turtle dove, Stefan has to look at people when he eats. He won't just eat what others give him. Chu Shenxiu obviously didn't understand what Xia Ying meant. Instead, he spread his hands helplessly and said, I'm not a bad person. Forget it, I don't understand even if I tell you. Anyway, don't provoke him. Xia Ying said, walked to Stefan and said to him, Stefan, he is my cousin, his name is Chu Shenxiu. Stephen glanced at Chu Shenxiu, his face was calm, as if he was looking at an object, without any emotion. Chu Shenxiu swallowed silently and thought to himself. How come this little guy looks more arrogant than the arrogant little gentleman? It seems that Xiajun has a successor. Big turtle dove, Stefan and I went to practice music. You can go around by yourself. Xia Ying finished speaking to Chu Shenxiu and left with Stefan. Chu Shenxiu looked at Xia Ying's back innocently. Sure enough, in her cousin Xia Ying's heart, music was more important than him. Chu Sensio followed the servant to his room. He was bored and ready to play a game. Chu Sensio just opened the game and saw today's performance ranking above. Jun Chennai is not arrogant, ranked first. Chu Sensio raised his eyebrows, and Xiajun overtook him again. Did this guy promise to study hard? Spend all your time dreaming? Ranking first every day, if you had this kind of brain in studying, you would have ranked first in the exam. Chu Sensio thought so and sent a message to Jun Chennai. Xiajun, how many high-scoring Chinese essays have you read? How are you doing with your math hyperbola? Have you understood the law of conservation of energy in physics? Do you know the periodic table of chemical elements by heart? Do you understand the major systems of biology? Not long after, Chu Sensio received a reply. Chu Shengxiu wo CNM. Thanks to the little cutie's sister you ran and looking at the sky for the rewards. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 458. Chapter 458, See once, Fight twice. Chu Sensio burst out laughing when he saw the reply. He could already imagine Jun Chennai's face as black as coal after reading the message he sent him. Not long after, Jun Chennai was KO'd. Jun Chennai started throwing the keyboard angrily. That old Indian turtle dove of Chu Sensio is really disgusting. He hasn't lost yet today, good guy. This guy suddenly sent these things to stimulate him, so that he was actually KO'd by someone using the weakest skill. The opponent was obviously a noob, but because of his bad luck, because he was the first person to be killed, his experience points and levels kept rising. Jun Chennai glanced at the computer screen with nostalgia for the last time. He still had to study without success. Damn it, why didn't he discover that Chu Sensio actually had the attributes of a devil teacher? This guy would haunt him on time every day and come over to hold him back when he was sneaking up while playing games. How did he know such a superb person? Just when Jun Chennai turned on the computer after studying forcefully for 2 hours and prepared to avenge his shame. Suddenly, I discovered that the number 1 spot on the ranking list was Indian turtle dove. Jun Chennai's anger level reached its peak. It turned out that this guy had such a wishful thinking. Deliberately him off to study so that I can have time to surpass him. Damn it, Jun Chennai was actually tricked by someone, and he was so miserable. Just when Chu Sensio was feeling complacent about getting the first place, Jun Chennai called. Chu Sensio smiled and raised his eyebrows, and glanced at the name on the phone screen. Although his method is clumsy, he is still capable of deceit. Jun Chennai must be furious at this moment, and Chu Sensio found it amusing just thinking about it. Hey, Xiajun, what's going on? Chu Sensio had a malicious smile on his lips, but his tone was as if nothing had happened. Jun Chennai didn't care about his trivial matters, and directly yelled, "You are such a sinister old turtle dove, you actually got me down while I was away." Chu Sensio smiled lightly, "I am doing this because of my strength." "What do you mean by taking advantage of your absence?" Jun Chennai sneered twice, "Is it due to strength? I'm so proud of you. Do you dare to be one-on-one with me?" "What, cousin Sakura, what did you want me to get you?" Chu Sensio deliberately put the phone away and then said this. He directed and acted out what Xia Ying asked him to do. Jun Chennai on the other end of the phone had a dark face and was so angry that he almost spontaneously commusted. Don't let him see Chu Sensio next time, otherwise he will see him once and beat him twice. Yu Lingfeng and Officer Song investigated for several days, but still found nothing. Being able to kill someone so openly shows that the witch is ready for everything. There was no way she was going to give them a chance to find her. In the office, Officer Song was calling his superiors to report something, while Yu Lingfeng and Rong Si were sitting on the couch waiting. After Officer Song finished making the phone call, he walked over to them. "Officer Song, have you ever thought about it? If those two people were not killed by the witch, they might have been at large all their lives. They have harmed so many people, and they really deserve to die. Wrong. Ci held a cup of wine in his hand and drank it. He was holding a cup of hot water and said to Officer Song. Officer Song did not deny Wrong Ci's point of view and nodded. Everyone understands the truth, but the law is like this. Killing is always wrong. Thanks to the little cutie Ryasuk for the reward. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 459. Chapter 459. The old branches show no signs of sprouting yet. Then if you really find her, will you hand her over to the superiors? Wrong. Ci seems to have asked a question whose answer is obvious at a glance. Finding the murderer and bringing him to justice is the duty of Officer Song. This is also the reason why he is here to investigate this case. However, Officer Song still paused for a long time without speaking. If she is really just out for revenge, and her nature is not bad, I don't hope she will be found. Hearing this, Wrong. Ci frowned. He thought Officer Song would say yes without hesitation, but his answer was beyond his expectation. The world seems to be quite harmonious, and the law seems to be quite useful. But the law is just the lowest line of morality, and in many cases, the law is not necessarily right. Police Officer Song said with profound meaning. Especially when the law meets emotional issues, such cases become even more complicated. At this time, Yu Lingfeng, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly said, "But the problem is, as long as she doesn't come out voluntarily, you will almost never find her, right, Wrong Ci?" Yu Lingfeng turned to look at Wrong Ci. Wrong Ci nodded, "You are right. He and Yu Lingfeng have been searching for so long but still can't find it, let alone Officer Song and others. So, what do the superiors say about this case? There is a time limit set by the superiors. If the search turns out to be fruitless, there is no other way." Officer Song shrugged and said helplessly. Many murderers have been wanted for decades, only to end up in vain. In many famous murder cases in history, whether domestic or foreign, those highly intelligent murderers are still at large. The witch may be one of them. By the way, brother Yu, do you want to travel abroad with me during the Chinese New Year this year? Police Officer Song suddenly changed the topic to a very brisk topic. The change was so fast that Wrong Ci choked on the water at the side. Police Officer Song is really unpredictable, and he is also so changeable when handling cases. Police Officer Song has always lived alone. In previous years, when Yu Lingfeng did not have 11 Ju, he spent the New Year with him. Two helpless people spend the New Year together. Yu Lingfeng raised his eyes and glanced at Officer Song. "No." Officer Song's face immediately dropped. "Then who did you spend time with?" Yu Lingfeng didn't say anything, but Wrong Ci coughed twice in embarrassment. "I said, you took down Xia Ying and her family so quickly." Officer Song then remembered that Yu Lingfeng was already a man with a girlfriend, and was no longer the same Yu Lingfeng who was single with him before. This year, even a guy like Yu Lingfeng has ushered in spring, but his old branch has not yet shown any signs of budding. "Almost," Yu Lingfeng said calmly. Wrong Ci knew that Yu Lingfeng was the son of Xia Chuanhai's old friend, so Xia Chuanhai and Luo Xin's favorability was always there. However, you must know that Xia Ying also has a super girl control Chu Shenxiu who is as good as 10 ants and 8 ants. Yu Lingfeng has already conquered the best one? What about Chu Shenxiu? Wrong Ci raised her eyebrows and mentioned him specifically. Jun Chenai had complained to him more than once before about the Chu Shenxiu who was more clingy than a gummy candy next to Xia Ying. Jun Chenai had been a headache before, but Yu Lingfeng actually managed to defeat him so quickly? End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 460. Chapter 460, Having a Wife and Forgetting Friends. Yu Lingfeng did not answer, but glanced at Rong Ci meaningfully. However, Rong Ci could tell a lot of information from that glance. Yu Lingfeng had clearly never noticed Chu Shenxiu at all. It doesn't matter what he controls, in short, as long as he can't deal with me. Since this case can no longer proceed, I will go back. Yu Lingfeng stood up, looked at Officer Song, and said. Officer Song sighed and said like an old father, "Oh, one by one, if you have a wife and forget your friends, go ahead, let me live alone until I grow old." Officer Song originally thought that Yu Lingfeng would at least reply with something, but in the end, he left without even looking back. Officer Song's face darkened. Very good, this is very Yu Lingfeng. This guy really intends to let him die alone. In the past few days when Chu Shenxiu went to Austria, his strength demonstrated to Stefan what it means to be a real girl control. When Xia Ying and Stefan were practicing piano, he would come over every once in a while to bring tea and water and warm greetings. He also specifically told Stefan not to get too close to his cousin Xia Ying, otherwise he would get hit. Stefan turned around and left when he saw Chu Shenxiu now. This man is really terrifying. When Yu Lingfeng arrived in Austria, Xia Ying and Stefan were practicing in the piano room, and Chu Shenxiu was in the kitchen preparing his latest love biscuits. Mordex is very busy every day, going to various places to give lectures, exchange music, and meet various powerful people. Therefore, they usually stay away from home during the day. After assigning Xia Ying and Stefan a day's study tasks, they go home at night for inspection and guidance. Yu Lingfeng learned about Chu Shenxiu's whereabouts from his servant, so he went to the kitchen. Before Chu Shenxiu blew up the kitchen, he pulled him over and stopped him. Fortunately he came in time. Hey, what are you doing? I'm making my love cookies. Chu Shenxiu protested dissatisfied. Yu Lingfeng lowered her eyes and looked at him helplessly. You'd better be kinder to this kitchen and don't challenge its tolerance limit. Chu Shenxiu's face darkened. Who is this person? This kind of person will never be able to eat his love biscuits for the rest of his life. How are you these days? Yu Lingfeng pretended to mention it accidentally. How about what? Chu Shenxiu didn't react for a moment, staring at Yu Lingfeng with a blank face. Has anyone come here to harass Xia Ying or something like that? Yu Lingfeng opened her thin lips lightly and said calmly. Chu Shenxiu looked at Yu Lingfeng strangely. Yes, aren't you? Yu Lingfeng's face darkened. Chu Shenxiu then thought about it. Right? When did he become the one who came to help him supervise his cousin Sakura? Could this be Yu Lingfeng's purpose, to send him here without any explanation, just to help supervise his cousin Xia Ying? This man is really scheming. Yu Lingfeng didn't plan to say anything more to Chu Shenxiu, and turned around to find Xia Ying. However, Yu Lingfeng had just walked a few steps when he suddenly thought of something and quickly turned back to tell Chu Shenxiu, never blow up the kitchen. Yu Lingfeng felt that if Chu Shenxiu continued like this, he could compile a book called 108 Ways to Correctly Blow Up a Kitchen. Chu Shenxiu's face turned dark and he glared at Yu Lingfeng angrily. He hasn't bombed the kitchen for several days, okay. After blowing up many kitchens, he has gradually figured out the secret. Thank you little cutie. Azure Gardenia? More rewards. End of this chapter.